Hey! What on earth drove me to focus on men? Good morning, man. Robert Weisstrom here in the office of the Seven Dimensions. Welcome and thank you for joining me. I hope you're doing well. Perhaps like me, you have been reading and hearing a lot of talk these days about the man crisis and about crisis in masculinity and the boy crisis and about the growing suicide among middle-aged men and about lost millennial young men who were raised by their single moms and about male bashing and women blaming men for everything that doesn't work in their lives. So why on earth did I take on this rat's nest of issues, beliefs, customs, assumptions, traditions, dead ends, sacred cows, vested interests, fear, dread, and ignorance? Whew. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I think about giving my time to a teacher, I want to know if they are credible. By that I mean, do they know what they're talking about and do they walk their talk, and does their information relate to what I'm looking for? So in this little video, I intend to help you understand more about me and why I'm dedicated to doing this work. Developing the Seven Dimensions has been a deeply personal unraveling because, like many of you, I had been completely enmeshed in the dynamic of growing up as a man in this culture. I've needed to sort out my own psycho-emotional spiritual self simply because I had to for my own peace of mind and because I could not afford another breakup or divorce. I remember walking away from the home of a woman I had just broken up with, and I heard her wailing on her front porch. That cry in the night hit me so deeply, I promised I'd never again let that happen. I did not want to cause that level of torment ever again for anyone. Yet 2 more divorces came as the result of not having gotten to the bottom of the condition which caused the breakdown, a condition which was much bigger than my promise. What I learned was that the problem was not about relating with women I chose, but about relating with me. All those external problems were simply symptoms of my relationship with myself. And that's what this is all about. For that reason, I want to spend a few minutes right here at the beginning of this new phase of Men Rising Now to tell you briefly about myself and how I came to create the 7 dimensions of relating. I was the younger of 2 siblings, and after the Second World War, my family settled in pristine Southern California, where I grew up, often surrounded by the smell of orange blossoms. Usually clear blue skies and the San Bernardino Mountains way off in the distance, and frequent expeditions to the beach. My parents were generally supportive of whatever I was up to, with a few notable exceptions. Since my mother didn't know how to do motherly love very well, she did what she knew best, which was to teach me how to debate and argue and think critically. My Swedish father taught me about integrity and instilled in me a love of nature and camping. I suppose you could say that my early years were relatively positive. So fast forward to my studies in philosophy at Cal Berkeley, where the free speech movement and learning the truth about my government's activity in Vietnam destroyed my faith in democracy and the myth of the American way. Plus, I realized that the philosophy I was studying was not going to change anybody's life, especially mine, so I dropped out after only 1 semester of grad school. Here's where it gets really interesting, because to avoid the draft, I joined the Peace Corps, which sent me to the heart of India to teach school for 2 years. That twist of fate turned out to be one of the greatest blessings and opportunities of my life. During that time, I was exposed to a different kind of philosophy in the form of Hinduism and Buddhism. This different kind of philosophy spoke not just to my abstract mind, but to everything about me and my connection with all life and all time. Among other things, those experiences inspired me to adopt a practice of meditation for the rest of my life. In addition, I've practiced yoga and some other Eastern arts as well. One of the conclusions I've drawn from teachers I've met and disciplines I've practiced is that only practices which include the whole person, mind, body, and being, will deliver the changes a person wants to make. This is especially true when it comes to the subject of relating and communicating, which those of you who have studied the 7 dimensions already know. Because we humans are incredibly complex, and we are communicating and relating on many levels all the time, whether we know it or not, and whether we want to or not. So, after India, I turned my attention to education and taught in public schools and private schools in and around Philadelphia, and taught a few years at Metro State College in Denver, which is also where I experienced my first marriage and my first divorce. Since that time, I've started businesses, turned business around, retired, lost everything, started over, and have lived in Europe. My home is now in the beautiful northwest of Washington State. The extreme nature of some of my adventures eventually drove my parents to disown me. However, the resulting reconciliation and healing of that dramatic break took all of us deeper in our ability to be honest with each other. I began coaching and leading workshops in 1982 in the San Francisco Bay Area. However, my practice was interrupted by my second divorce, and although successful on one level, my integrity demanded that I take my personal experience deeper, because whatever my clients were dealing with almost always included relationships, and I had some catching up to do. So I switched to painting houses for a couple of years. And then on a different track, artistic expression, you see, has always been an essential part of my life. And after moving to Hawaii with my new family, I experienced modest success in my career as a professional artist. But it was my third divorce 23 years ago that finally brought me face to face with the fact that I had a lot further to go in understanding myself. There I was one more time dealing with the financial costs, the stress, and the gut-wrenching pain that comes with the breakup of a family. It became unavoidably obvious that everything I valued in life involved other people, one way or another, and the tools in my toolbox were simply not cutting it. The gnawing question on my mind was, what's wrong with me? What is it about me that keeps me failing at relating and communicating? So after sufficiently beating myself up, I looked around and I could see that it wasn't just me, but that just about everyone I knew or had ever known was dealing with their own version of what I call relational atrophy, and was living in a state of pretending or protecting or hoping, or like my parents, living in denial and avoiding difficult conversations while settling for scraps when a feast is actually available. I mean, it's everywhere. Does that make sense to you? With that realization, I became single-focused on a new question. Rather than what is wrong with me, I began to ask, what is it about this culture that makes relating and intimacy and honest communicating so difficult, especially since so many people want it? You see, I absolutely had to know, because I knew in my guts and my heart that something more was possible, because I had tasted delicious moments of being connected many times. But for one reason or another, the experience didn't last. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about here. So I started teaching classes in order to learn what I didn't know, because teaching, in my experience, is a great way to learn something. And what I learned became my first book, Communicating for Life. One thing I noticed over time was that my classes were attended almost entirely by women, along with a handful of reluctant men. But because the need is so great and the fallout from poor communicating hurts all of us, a few years ago I changed my question to, what is it about this culture that makes relating, intimacy, and honest communicating so difficult, especially for men? So why did I take this on? Because no one else was. I mean, although there are more programs for both men and women out there, all the programs I've found are about fixing people or fixing relationships. Men Rising Now, you see, is different because it's based on the 7 dimensions, the inner game of exceptional relating. My purpose in creating Men Rising Now is to provide men with access to information and tools which our culture doesn't provide, our boys and young men, yet which are absolutely crucial to personal development, especially as men relate to themselves and to the people around them. The practices of the 7 dimensions have been tested and have been proven to work in bedrooms, bathrooms, boardrooms, offices, kitchens, and cars. They work in those common everyday places where misunderstandings and miscommunications can mess up something a person worked hard to create. The 7 dimensions engage men in practices that can help them to avoid the traps and potholes of relating and to tap into the wealth that is available in the people around them. Therefore, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go on over to menrisingnow.com and subscribe so you can join the conversation and watch the 22 short 7 dimensions training videos. They're about 10 minutes long each, which are free only through December. And then share this one-of-a-kind resource with a man you know who would welcome having a hand in dealing with the most important and most complicated area of life. I hope this little video has been helpful for you, so until next time, breathe and stay curious.